Howdy everyone, it's Camille. Welcome back to my channel. Today is going to be a very different type of video, but I am cautiously excited about sharing my experiences with continuing to work with horses into my pregnancy. I'm currently almost 35 weeks pregnant and I am still training horses and working with them for a living. I wanted to make this video because there's not a lot of information out there on equestrians who do continue their work with horses into their pregnancies. It almost felt like it was a shameful thing or something that shouldn't be talked about, and every single Google search that I did on the topic came up with just blanket statements that said you should not be riding horses while pregnant, and it didn't really refer to professional women who make their entire living working with horses. I tried to find first-hand accounts like these about professional women in the equine industry who continue working with horses into their pregnancy, but I couldn't really get any information about what I should be expecting, what the risks are, and when I should stop riding. There's really just little to no information out there, and that made it a little bit scarier for me, and I'm hoping that by sharing my experiences that I can help ease the minds of women who are considering pregnancy or have just found out they're pregnant and are about to go through the same experiences that I did. Thankfully, I do have a few friends in the equine industry who are mothers, and I was able to bug them with all of my questions, and most of them were very reassuring. Actually, all of them were very reassuring and very comforting. They all told me they rode up until the last weeks of their pregnancy and suffered no consequences because of it, and so that really put my mind at ease. Now please remember that this video is not medical advice. I am not a doctor, and if you have any questions or concerns, you should always bring those up with your doctor and not rely on the advice of someone on YouTube. This video is only meant to document and share my own experiences so that they can hopefully help somebody else. Now keep in mind that everyone is different and everyone's pregnancy journey is going to be different. Now this pregnancy is my very first, and it was a welcome surprise. I'm due with a boy on June 14th, and it's getting really close. I have just over 5 weeks to go. I actually didn't know I was pregnant for the majority of the first trimester because I didn't really have any symptoms. Mostly I was more exhausted than normal, and I found it really hard getting through a full work day where sometimes I was training up to 8 or 9 horses a day, and it was really taking a toll on me, and I didn't really know why. When we did find out that I was pregnant, one of the largest concerns I had for my doctor was naturally how I was going to be able to continue working with horses, whether it was safe, and what sort of things I needed to consider going forwards. I made sure to let her know that working with horses isn't just something I do on the weekends. It's not a hobby or a pastime for me. It's something I've been doing professionally now for years, and it's a huge part of my identity, and it is my sole income. She was really understanding and reassuring, but she did make sure that I understood two very important things. First of all was that I should not be trying anything new, and I shouldn't be doing anything that causes any sort of physical stress or pain. If I'm in any sort of discomfort or pain, I should stop what I'm doing and not return to that activity. Secondly, she stated that any abdominal trauma past 12 weeks of pregnancy has the chance of putting the pregnancy at risk, and that's something that's very serious and shouldn't be taken lightly. Before 12 weeks of pregnancy, the baby sits inside the pelvic girdle and is very well protected. So it would take a really serious injury, like breaking a hip, to put the pregnancy at risk. But she also said that staying active during a pregnancy is very important to having a healthy baby. So while you shouldn't try to take on any sort of new exercise or new risk, continuing to do the things that you're already comfortable doing is not against a doctor's recommendation, and the basic advice for all pregnant women is that they should continue doing their regular exercise and activity until it becomes uncomfortable or unsafe to do so. During the first trimester, I had a full docket of training horses that I decided to continue working with as normal, including Tango and Cora, who are two colts that I was getting started under saddle. I managed to get them under saddle safely using the help of friends to do the first few rides, and continued their training under saddle and felt very safe and comfortable doing so. They were both really uncomplicated colt starts, and I really did not see myself getting hurt in any way, shape, or form while riding them. Another important thing to consider is that my pregnancy is considered very low risk. I have absolutely no health concerns, and all of my labs and tests have come back normal through the entire pregnancy. So I'm really lucky and blessed that I'm considered low risk, and it gives me a level of confidence that I'm able to continue doing the things that I do as long as I make sure to do them safely. Now, going forwards into the second trimester, I had some decisions to make. I thought about what my doctor said about how any sort of trauma to the abdomen after 12 weeks of pregnancy could be very risky, and I thought back upon all the times that I've gotten hurt before when working with horses. Now, none of the times that I've been injured in the past 3 years, for example, have been any kind of abdominal traumas, but I obviously want to avoid any sort of fall or injury at all during this pregnancy. Every time I did fall off a horse or get injured, it was working with an aggressive horse or doing something fun but stupid on one of my broke horses, or pushing a green horse into a risky situation. So therefore I decided I'd stop taking aggressive horses in for training. I would finish out the green horses that I was working on without pushing them outside of their comfort zones, and I'd continue to ride my own personal horses without trying anything new or anything risky at all. Continuing to ride during your pregnancy is a very personal decision, and it depends a lot on your experience level as well as your individual risk tolerance. Now, I absolutely wouldn't recommend anyone who's a beginner, intermediate, or even most advanced riders continue well on into their pregnancy. It really takes more than just skill level. It takes knowing how to keep yourself out of a risky situation, knowing how to read a horse, and being able to make those judgment calls, which just doesn't come unless you have a lot of experience. Deciding whether or not to ride during your pregnancy depends not only on your experience level, but also on your individual risk tolerance. For example, my risk tolerance is really high. I almost never wear a helmet when I'm riding. Now, I would never discourage others from doing so, but it's a personal decision, and it's one that I'm comfortable with. With the new safety measures that I've been taking to keep myself safe and avoid risky situations, I feel more likely to get injured in a traffic accident than I do working with my personal horses and continuing the work that I do with my client horses. In the second trimester, I did still take on one colt start, but I didn't do any of the riding myself. I was actually able to rely on the help of friends to get this horse started under saddle and give her a little bit of a foundation in the round pen before she continued on with another trainer. The second trimester was actually a lot easier for me than the first. I had a lot of my energy back, and I was able to get a lot done at work and finish up on some personal projects as well. So it was really nice to have that time to wrap a lot of things up and prepare for the more difficult times ahead. I was able to finish putting a really solid foundation on Cora, the horse that I started in my first trimester, and she came along really nicely, and we were even able to get some trail riding done, and I even put her over a little cross rail during her training. I felt very comfortable and safe the entire time I was riding her, and that translated over really well to her owner, and they're doing great together now. Similarly, Tango came along under saddle extremely well. I was actually able to start him very slowly and very steadily over some small fences. He's a really brave, truly exceptionally brave horse, and he never once spooked or looked twice or refused at any sort of fill or any sort of jump that I pointed him at. He's always been the same horse no matter where I've taken him, so with all of those things in mind, I decided to enter him into a hunter jumper show at Texas Rose Horse Park at 6 months pregnant. Now, that was a fun adventure, and at the end of the weekend, he came away the grand champion of the 18-inch division. I was really proud of Tango, and it felt amazing to know that I was able to still have those sorts of accomplishments even so far along into my pregnancy. Not once yet have I felt unsafe in doing my job. It really helps that I have an incredibly supportive fiance and a supportive doctor, and I'm able to continue doing what I love, making an income, all while growing my unborn child. The third trimester has gotten a little bit more difficult for me. Working with horses all day long has definitely started to take more of a physical toll on my body. And so I have to really be careful not to overdo it, because if I do, my feet, my back, everything just aches like crazy by the end of the day. I've had to learn how not to push myself to the ends of my physical limits, which is really hard because that's something that I've done my entire life. But I've weaned out all my riding client horses now in the third trimester, and I only have a couple of groundwork client horses. So I'm able to still continue doing what I love without overworking myself. Currently, I have 5 weeks to go, and I'm still able to do all of my regular chores, all my feeding, all my mucking, work with my client horses on the ground, and continue riding my personal mares. I don't do anything new or super challenging on them, but it's been really nice to get back to the basics and just have some fun. One of my client horses right now is Carousel. She is a wild Mustang going through my gentling program. Now, would I recommend anyone who's not super experienced with Mustangs to be working with wild horses during the third trimester of pregnancy? Absolutely not. But I feel very comfortable keeping myself safe. I have 5 years of experience now working with wild horses, which is why I feel safe and comfortable still working with Carousel, because I have the experience and the feel to know how to keep myself out of a sticky situation. And once Carousel's groundwork is finished, she's going to continue on to training with her owner, and I think the two of them are a really good fit, and they will make a lot of progress moving forwards. Now, as I get closer to my due date, I'm going to need a lot of help. That's why I asked my little sister Ellen to come be my intern for the summer. So she's going to be moving up here next week with her Mustang Prince, and she's going to be spending the summer with me. She'll be taking over most of my chores soon, and she'll be helping me with the client horses as needed. Sam is also going to be here for the next couple of weeks, and we have some really cool projects coming up. That brings me to an exciting announcement. Now, if you didn't think I was crazy before this point in the video, you definitely will now. This Friday, me, Sam, and Ellen are driving up to Oklahoma to pick up our 2022 Oklahoma Extreme Mustang Makeover horses. Yes, that's right, I'm entering an Extreme Mustang Makeover at 9 months pregnant. This will be my 4th Extreme Mustang Makeover, and I'm really excited and anxious about this journey. The plan is to do most of the initial gentling myself. Thankfully, I have a really good support team around me. My fiance Connor, Sam, Ellen, and numerous other friends who I'm sure are going to be more than happy to help me out. So if I ever get to a point in the gentling process where I feel I can't do something or I feel unsafe doing something, I'll have them to fall back on. The plan is to have Ellen and Sam start this horse under saddle before Sam leaves to continue her travels at the end of May. That way Ellen can continue the riding under my direction and supervision, as well as get help from me on her own makeover horse. I will absolutely not be riding this horse until after I give birth. Now, my due date is June 14th, and I'm expecting at least 2 weeks of recovery time after giving birth before I'm ready to swing a leg over a green colt. So that gives me about 30 days left in the makeover training period to continue this horse under saddle or get it under saddle if it's not under saddle yet, and make it to the makeover in September. That's an extremely constrained timeline on top of an extremely constrained timeline. So I'm having to go into this and cut any emotional ties that I have to the outcome, which is really hard to do. I'm trying to go into this without a competitive nature, which is very hard for me, and learn how to enjoy the process a little bit more. So I think that's going to be a really good teaching point for me and an opportunity for growth. I know there's a high probability that I won't make it to this makeover and I'll have to drop out. That's something that I have come to terms with and I fully accept. It really depends on getting the right horse for the job. So I am hoping and praying that the horse I am assigned this week is up for the task. Now that I've gone over a little overview of my entire pregnancy and my plans going forwards, I wanted to answer some of y'all's questions that y'all asked on my Instagram poll. Now, most of y'all's questions were about safety, and I feel like I've answered most of those already. So I'm going to get into the next topic, which was things that I have to do differently now that I'm pregnant and any sort of limitations that I have. And there's a lot of those. One of the biggest things I have to do differently is limit myself on heavy lifting. Doctors recommend pregnant women not to do any sort of heavy lifting or put any excess strain on the body because you're at higher chance of risk for an injury or a hernia. Now, I feel like my definition of heavy lifting is a little bit different than the definition that the internet gives. So the numbers guidelines, like don't lift more than 20 pounds, don't lift more than 30 pounds, I didn't feel really applied, but the general guidelines were really helpful to me, which were don't lift anything that you feel you have to strain to lift, and don't lift anything that you feel like you have to hold your breath to lift. At the start of my pregnancy, it was very easy to continue chucking hay bales, carrying feed buckets, water buckets, and it wasn't a strain on me at all. So I was lifting beyond the 20-pound or 30-pound limit based on what stage of the pregnancy that I was in. But as things got further along, it did become more of a strain on my body to try and lift things. So I did have to limit myself, and I no longer am able to carry a full bale of hay without straining. Thankfully, like I've said a bunch of times already, I have a really great support crew, and I have Connor or Sam to help me unload bales of hay when I bring them back from the feed store. I'm still able to chuck them off the back of the truck without lifting them, and Connor and Sam help stack them for me. Now, feeding horses, I used to be able to carry a whole bale of hay out into the pasture. Now what I do is I just bring my wheelbarrow into the feed room, and whatever quantity of hay that I need, I just transfer into the wheelbarrow by flakes of 2 so that I'm not putting any sort of excess stress on my body, and I'm still able to do my chores as normal. Now, as far as riding goes, it hasn't been too stressful on my body to continue riding. There are times where I get a sort of pinch or a cramp in my stomach, and I just need to take a break. And so anytime I feel a little bit uncomfortable, I just take a break, go back to the walk, and we walk around a little bit, and then I start trying to do a little bit more activity and see how I'm feeling. But I really have learned how to pay more attention to my body and make sure that I'm not overdoing it. Lately, I've been riding in a belly band, which helps support the bump and take some of the pressure off of my back. So my back wasn't really getting sore during the riding, but at the end of a long day, I was starting to feel the effects. So riding in the belly band really has helped prevent me from getting sore and putting too much strain on my back. Other than that, not much has changed about my riding. I'm not able to post or rise into my stirrups quite so far before my belly touches the saddle horn, so that's really the only thing that's changed. I just make sure to take breaks and listen to my body. For example, I was getting a lot of cramps when riding if I ate or drank too much before getting on the horse, that movement would give me a stitch in my side. And so I made sure that I didn't eat or drink too soon before riding, and that has completely gone away. Later in the pregnancy, one of the things that I've been dealing with has been the heat. It is May now in Texas, and the highs are in the 90s every single day. So I really have to make sure to pay attention to myself, because it's a lot easier to get overheated when you're pregnant, because carrying a baby is like carrying a portable furnace on your body at all times with no way to turn it off. So I make sure if I'm getting hot, I take a break, I go inside. I always have a cold drink of water on hand, and sometimes I wear a wet towel around my neck, and that helps me from getting too hot. Now, getting into y'all's more specific questions. Elena's Natural Horse Journey asked, are there certain things you take a slower approach to, like ropes, feet, etc.? Yes, picking up the feet is something I take a lot slower now. I'm very aware of the fact that horses are strong animals and their feet are also very strong. So I take a much slower approach now, just out of an abundance of caution. This username is cut off. An abundance of paracord, I think it says paracord, said, how do you handle pain tolerance? I have a pretty high pain threshold. I don't know so much if I don't feel pain as much or if I'm better ignoring it, but like I've stated before, I've learned to become more aware of my body and listen to when it's telling me to take a break or quit, because that's really important not to overstress myself. Nadia Seymour asked, have you faced any backlash? Not really. I haven't been too vocal about my pregnancy journey on Facebook or Instagram, and I've hardly shared anything about it on YouTube so far. So, maybe that'll change with this video. I might get a ton of backlash, who knows, but I really have only gotten a couple of rude comments, which I immediately just delete and ignore. Eleonora asked, how old are you? I turned 23 this month. Julie Ta A asked, any fears of riding or training while pregnant? Does it make you nervous? No, like I said, I've taken my usual training level and taken away anything that has ever made me nervous or has the potential of injuring me. And so it's actually been a lot more fun to train than normal because I'm not taking any sort of risks. The Bethy Life asked if I had any pant recommendations. Also pregnant over here and struggling with jeans/riding pants. Yes, the jeans I'm wearing now are actually the same jeans that fit me before pregnancy. I just like to wear a size up, and jeans that really stretch. As you can see, these really stretch. These are buckle jeans, and I get them secondhand from Plato's Closet for like $20 a pair. So I absolutely love that because these jeans are insanely comfortable. They stretch a lot for riding, and obviously they've stretched a lot to accompany my growing body. As far as English riding goes, the breeches that I wore to show in at 6 months pregnant were the Carrots brand. I've always loved their breeches. They also have some boot cut styles, which I use for riding Western as well. There's a lot of stretch. It kind of feels like you're wearing a second skin and not like you're wearing a claustrophobic layer. So I really love the Carrots brand as well. This is not a promoted product. As far as shirts go, what I'm wearing right now and what I wear a lot is the sun shirts. My dad got me 2 of these shirts new from the brand Anetic, and they've been really great for, again, staying cool in the heat. They also have a lot of stretch to them, and people always look at me crazy like, why are you wearing long sleeves in the middle of summer? Well, they're actually a lot lighter than cotton and much more breathable, so they are a lot more comfortable than a regular cotton shirt. Again, this is not a promoted product. Taylor Evans asked, what's the hardest thing to overcome as a trainer while pregnant? Honestly, for me, it's been the exhaustion. Like I said, I'm lucky I haven't had any complications so far or any terrible pregnancy symptoms. So the hardest thing for me is not having the energy that I used to have and feeling like I'm being lazy when really my body's just telling me to slow down. Crazy Cowgirl asked how I deal with people's opinions on pregnancy and working with horses. Like I said, as far as social media goes, I haven't had a ton of nasty comments yet. When I do, I just delete and move on. Now, all of my close family has been incredibly supportive of me continuing to work while pregnant. Some of my more distant family is very concerned for me because none of them are really horse people, so the idea of getting on a wild, crazy horse while pregnant is a risk that they themselves would not even think of tolerating. And I have to keep in mind they come from a very different mindset than I do, so I give them lots of grace. I know that it all comes from a place of worrying about me, so I love them and I listen to them, but I don't put a lot of stock into it when they have concerns. Excel Supplements asked, have you changed the way you get on a horse? Yes, actually. During the first trimester, I was still getting on like 16-hand horses from the ground, and now, even though I can ground mount, I'm trying not to put that extra stress on my body, so I always get on with a mounting block now. Lee Highland asked, do you ever feel unsafe working with flighty mustangs while pregnant? No, because if I ever get to where it's too much, I just let go of the rope and grab the horse again and keep working on what we were working on. I haven't worked with, besides Carousel and her pin, it's been really easy for me, more or less, to keep her in the same spot because there's not really anywhere she can run. I've only had a couple situations where I've had to drop the rope out of me not wanting to get myself hurt, and so it's not that I feel unsafe, it's that I'm not going to take that risk, so I drop that rope and get the horse back and keep working. MH Equus said, how will you balance work and taking care of the baby once it's born? Well, like I said, Ellen's coming to visit this summer, so she's going to be a huge part of helping me balance work and the baby. My fiance Connor also has an amazing job as a paramedic, so he works 1 day on and has 2 days of every 3 days off, so he's also going to be able to help quite a bit with the baby as well. Reagan Blake asked, do the horses treat you different when you're pregnant versus not pregnant? I haven't really noticed a difference. A lot of people say that they did, but I haven't noticed it. Maybe later on I will. I'm not so sure on that one. Blue Sparkle asked, how to work on balance. I tried riding when I was 6 months pregnant. I felt like I had never been on a horse. So I haven't had any sort of balance issues at all through my pregnancy. I felt very confident and safe both on my feet and on horseback. That's one of the reasons I'm still riding. If I was having balance issues myself personally, I probably would not be on horseback. Clumsy Equestrian, I love that username. Clumsy Equestrian asked, is it taking more energy to work with horses now than it was before? Yes, like I said, exhaustion's been one of the main difficulties of the job. Ginger R. Virus asked, tricks, tips, and hacks, planning mine and worried about losing my favorite hobby. I would say even if you make the decision to not continue riding, there's still so much that you can do with horses. Just this weekend I taught a clinic on the ground, a Liberty and Trick clinic, and one of the things that I stressed to the participants and the auditors is that Liberty is so incredible because it can be worked on with a horse that is retired and no longer sound for riding. It can be worked on with a handler who is terrified of riding or has some sort of trauma about being in the saddle, and it really gives you something to work on when you're unable to ride or for some reason have decided to take a break from riding. So if you're worried about losing your hobby, I would try to look into things like liberty training and trick training, some stuff you can do on the ground with your horses that you can continue to bond and continue to have something to work on. Some things that have helped me at the end of a long day working with horses have been putting my feet in a little bit of an ice bath. Lately I've been dealing with a lot of foot pain and some swelling associated with that. So an ice bath for my feet at the end of the day or when I'm taking a break working on something inside has been really helpful for keeping the swelling down, as well as laying down and elevating my feet. That helps me still fit into my tennis shoes because I can no longer fit into my riding boots anymore. The other thing that has been my saving grace has been a heating pad on my back. At the end of the day when I'm eating dinner or watching TV, I sit down with that heating pad on my lower back. That's where my back gets the most sore, and it has been really helpful to alleviating that pain. Twilight, the OTTB, asked, is it more difficult training a completely unhandled Mustang than normal since you're pregnant? Mostly no. Only in a couple scenarios, yes. For example, Carousel's past this now, but in the initial stages of teaching her to lead, there were a couple times where I just felt my reaction time was slower than normal, and I was unable to keep her from pulling away from me out of my hands. And so those moments were really frustrating, but I was still able to work past them. Polo Pony 20 asked, what does your work-life balance look like now? Are you spending less time training or perhaps more? I was probably spending a little bit more in the first and second trimester, and now I've definitely dialed it back and I'm spending less because, like I said, it's starting to take more of a physical toll on me and I need to listen to my body and slow it down some. Liz Blaine 14 asked, what movements/maneuvers would you not do further along and why? I can't think of any specific movements that I might not do. Definitely not jumping anymore. Even a little bitty cross rail I probably wouldn't do right now. A big long sliding stop probably wouldn't do right now. Going down the fence, doing cow work, I definitely wouldn't do right now because that involves a high degree of risk and it's something I've never done before, so I wouldn't be trying to do that. But in general, anything that felt too new, too uncomfortable, or caused pain, I wouldn't be doing right now. NF Equines asked, is your seat position changed by being pregnant? Yes, my seat position has definitely changed. I ride with my feet a little bit more kicked forward right now just because my center of gravity is different than it used to be. It's still a comfortable position and I don't think it looks awful, especially not for a Western rider, but I'm definitely looking to get my equitation back after the pregnancy. That's about all that I have to share today. I hope that if you yourself are pregnant or considering having a child in the future, that this video was helpful and reassuring. Please remember, none of this should be taken as medical advice, and you should always consult your doctor before continuing to ride while pregnant. Thank you all for joining me today for this discussion. I really had a good time sharing my experiences with you all, and I hope that you enjoyed hearing about them as well. I'll see you in the next video.